All righty. Once we have counselors in their seats, we can get started. We do have quorum. Once we have counselors in their seats. Councilor Sachs is online. Councilor Sachs, can you just unmute yourself to acknowledge that you're here with us? I do understand that you cannot turn your camera right now.
I'm here. Thank you very much.
You hear? Can you just repeat what you just said, Councilor Sachs?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we can get started. So good morning. My name is Councilor Chris Moyes. I am the chair of the Toronto and East York Community Council. We do have quorum. I'm now calling meeting 21 to order, and welcome to those in the room and online, and of course to a very competent staff as well. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person at City Hall in Committee Room Number 1. This meeting is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. Although we may be meeting in different locations today, the Toronto and East York Community Council would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with Mississaugas of the Credit. As a Caribbean Canadian, I am committed to continually acting in solidarity with our African, Caribbean, and Black communities seeking freedom and reparative justice in light of the history and ongoing legacy of slavery that continues to impact our communities across Canada. As part of this commitment, I would also like to acknowledge that not all people came to these lands as migrants and settlers. Specifically, I wish to acknowledge those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as the result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. In support of the City of Toronto's ongoing efforts confronting Black racism, I pay tribute to those ancestors of African, Caribbean, and Black origin and descent. If you are registered to speak at today's meeting, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order they appear on the list. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Toronto and East York Community Council page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Members, the city clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and on CMP, the clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available to members if you need to help with your devices. I also want to remind you to please submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at toicc@toronto.ca to help with motions. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you do have an interest, please raise your hand or unmute your mic and indicate the item number and the nature of the interest. Seeing none, Deputy Mayor Malik, may I have a motion to confirm the minutes from our meeting on February 20th, 2025?
Yes, I'd like to move that motion.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Before we begin agenda rundown, may I have a motion to add new business items TE 21.51 and TE 21.52. Councilor Bravo, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So items TE 21.1 to TE 21.22 are timed, so we will begin the run through at items TE 21.23. TE 21.23, changes to Business Improvement Area Board of Management. Councilor Bradford, you want to move that item?
With the staff recommendations, please.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. TE 21.24, 114 Ossington Avenue encroachment appeal. Deputy Mayor Malik.
Thank you. I'd like to move my motion.
All those in, do you have a motion?
Yeah, I believe we do. Oh, it's just the staff recommendation? All right, I'll move the staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. TE 21.25, encroachment appeal 495 to 517 Wellington Street West, proposed ground sign. Deputy Mayor Malik.
Yeah, we have a motion to defer it until the next meeting of TUICC in May.
Do you have the? Okay. All those in favor of deferral? Opposed? Carried. Item 21, there's a speaker, so we'll go to item TE 21.27. 227 Gerard Street East, construction staging area time extension. Oh, that's me. Sorry. I was wondering who's Ward 13? One moment. Okay, I think I have everything now. I'm going to move staff's recommendation this item. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. T 21.28, assumption of services registration, registered plan 66M to 2530 -11286680 SDE. I don't know what all that means. Somerset Wallace Development Limited, Sosa Mendes Street, Macaulay Avenue Extension, Wallace Avenue Subdivision. Councillor Bravo.
I'd like to move the staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.29, Road Safety Review, Crawford Street. Deputy Mayor Malik.
Thank you. I'd like to move the staff recommendations, please.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor Fletcher has asked me to hold on her items till she gets here, so we'll move on to the next item. TE 21.31, 2024 Distillery Winter Village Post-Event Review. Councilor Deputy Mayor Malik.
Thank you very much.
Oh, there's speakers in this item?
But I thought that there was one speaker, right? We have two. Okay. Well, the item's being deferred for any of the speakers, so we did share with the ones who were listed yesterday. So what would need to happen?
We have to give them the option if they wish to speak to this meeting or move on to the 18th.
So we'll,
Did you want to mention that?
okay. As the Deputy Mayor mentioned, she is going to defer this item to the next meeting. So the speakers who are registered to speak on this item, you could either speak to it today or speak to it at our next meeting. But I will hold this item down, and you can decide when the time comes.
Thank you.
T 21.32, accessible parking spaces, April 2025. Councilor Bravo.
I'd like to move the staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.33, accessible parking spaces, April 2025, non-delegated. Councilor Bravo.
I'd like to move the staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.34, removal of on-street accessible loading zone, Euclid Avenue. Councilor Sachs, I think it is.
I'd like to move the staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.35, parking amendment, Corby Avenue. Councilor Bravo.
I'd like to move the staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.36, parking amendment, Hannah Avenue. Deputy Mayor Malik.
I'd like to move the staff recommendations, please.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.37, parking amendment, Ayanuzi Street. Deputy Mayor Malik.
I'd like to move the staff recommendation, please.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.38, all-way stop control, Humberview Road and Halford Avenue. Councilor,
That's me. I'll move staff recommendations.
all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.39, always stop control, Indian Road and Jeffrey Street. Council Perks?
Staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.40, temporary street closure of Bremer Boulevard for the Toronto Maple Leafs and Toronto Raptors 2025 playoff season. Deputy Malik?
I'd like to move the staff recommendation, please.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.41, Bel Air Street, recurring seasonal closure, Cumberland Street to Yorkville Avenue. Councilor Sachs?
Yes, I have a
There's a motion.
to amend. Yes,
Okay.
this closure has occurred year after year. We don't have
So
to.
Councilor Sachs, we can barely hear you, so you may need to speak up, please.
Yes, I have an amendment, which you can see on the screen, changing the dates.
Okay. So we're moving the
I'm
amendment?
moving the amendment and then the item. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, just add some additional dates.
Okay, we're moving the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried as amended? Nope. That's it? Okay, great. T 21.42, traffic calming speed humps, Peveril Hill South. Councilors Matlow.
Matlow,
Peveril Hill South, and I move it.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.43, revised speed bump locations, public lane west of Logan Avenue. Actually, that's Councilor Fletcher, and I'm going to hold it down for her. T 21.44, vehicle with restriction lane south of College Street between Monrose Avenue and Beatrice Street, and the first lane north of Dundas Street West between Montrose Avenue and Beatrice Street. Councilor Sachs.
I move the staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Those carried. TE 21.45, appointments to the 519 Church Street Community Center Board of Management. I'm going to move staff's recs. All those in favor? Those carried. T 21.46, appointments of the public members to the Moss Park Arena Board. Okay, do I have a motion? All those in favor of the motion? Carried, and there's, I think it's another.
Item is amended.
Item as amended, all those in favor? Opposed, carried, thank you. T 21.47, Lapin Avenue parking amendments. Councilor Bravo.
I'd like to move the recommendations. Oh, sorry about that. I do. Yeah, the memo has revised recommendations and are more current than the ones that were submitted previously in our letter. Thanks.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. T 21.48, installation of speed bumps on public laneway south of Davenport Road, east of Salem Avenue. Councilor Bravo.
Move the recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed, carried. T 21.49, installation of speed bumps on public laneway east of Old Weston Road and south of Davenport Road. Councilor Bravo.
Move the recommendations, please.
All those in favor? Opposed, carried. T 21.50, amending existing Section 37 agreement to facilitate purchase of community space in the Church Wellesley Village. And I'm going to move my letter, my letter. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you. Okay, I think that's the rundown.
And then we just add those two new business items, 51 and 52. We can deal with those.
Sorry. Thank you. So we can add, we already added them, so item T 21.51, fair distribution of traffic among Palmerston Boulevard and neighboring streets.
I move the recommendations in my letter.
Sorry, 1 second.
It's Counselor Sachs. Yeah,
Do we have,
we're fine.
okay.
She just thought it was Counselor.
Sorry, go ahead, Councilor Sachs.
I move the recommendations in my letter.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.52, design revision to the Woodbine cycle track. Councilor Bradford.
I'd like to move the recommendations in my letter, please.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Awesome, thank you.
I do have a letter that I submitted.
I think we're gonna do those.
So we also have additional new business items to introduce. The first one is from me, I believe. Parking amendments, Palace Street between Coopergram Street and Tannery Road. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay.
It's just the introduction.
Introduction item. Councilor Matlow has one here. Expending safety installations at the Vaughan Road and Arlington Avenue intersection. All those in favor of adding this item? Opposed? Carried. Deputy Mayor Malik, restoring public art at Canoe Landing Park. All those in favor of adding this item? Opposed? Carried. Councilor Bravo, Dover Court Road parking amendments. Am I missing something? Okay. All those in favor of adding this item? Opposed? Carried. Northumberland Street parking amendment, also for Councilor Bravo. All those in favor of adding? Opposed? Carried. Perth Avenue and Sterling Road traffic and parking amendments, it's also Councilor Bravo. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor Bradford, you also have one here, I believe. Parking amendments, Salmon Avenue. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so those are added. Are we on track to 9:30? Okay, we're going back to the top of the agenda. Okay, T 21.21, naming of the existing public lanes south of Queen Street West, extending between Augusta Avenue and Spadina Avenue. Deputy Mayor Malik.
I just have a motion that's being prepared, so I'll hold the item down.
Okay. TE 20, Council Fletcher's not here yet, so we'll go to TE 21.3, naming of a proposed private street for development at 6 Dawes Road. Councilor Bradford.
Move the staff recommendations, please.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we, TE 21.4, 158 Sterling Road, blocks 5.
You're right at item 3.
Oh, actually, we just did item 3.
Item 3, we can do item 3. Did item 3?
I just did it.
Okay, we held 4. So we can go to item, the one that counts, Deputy Mayor.
So T 21.31, 2024 Distillery Winter Village post-event review. There's a motion to defer this item. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're a little ahead of time this morning. Again, I'm too efficient for my own good. So according to the clock in the room, it's 10 o'clock, so I'm gonna continue. TE 21.4, 158 Sterling Road and 190 Sterling Road, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application. We do have speakers on this item. First up is Cara Sweeney. Are you here? South Junction Tranquil Grove. You're in line? Okay. You have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. 5 minutes isn't enough time to explain all of the reasons why you should not approve these condo towers. We have submitted a number of letters outlining the many issues with these developments. I hope that you will all take the time to read those and to consider them. We've asked for more time, but Councillor Bravo would not agree to defer the hearing. The report on this issue was only issued on March the 18th. And for reasons which are not clear to us, this is being pushed through today. I'm going to use my time because 5 minutes isn't enough time to talk about the bigger problem here. You see, this isn't the first time that we are here to oppose condo towers in our tiny little neighborhood. It's not even the second time or the third time. Because in the last 2 or 3 years, there have been 7 condo development applications for our neighborhood. And that does not include these 2. The city was so concerned that they ordered an area study in order to properly plan and respond to these applications. That study was completed in 2022 and endorsed by City Council. And since then, almost all of those applications have been approved, almost all of them inconsistent with the area study. And every time, Councillor Bravo has responded saying there's nothing I can do. My hands are tied. So when we became aware that these 2 proposals were being considered, land that had previously been divided up and settled in 2015, we were apoplectic. How can developers get a decision in their favor and then come back a few years later asking for 28 and 39 stories? Our councillor's response, there's nothing I can do, my hands are tied. Well, that's not exactly true, because we've been fighting these towers, because we, the community, have been to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And what happens when we go there, instead of fighting with the developers, we end up fighting with the city. We are 2 and 3 years into these fights with no end in sight. In fact, we're in court on Monday morning, not against the developers, but against the city, because about filing our documents a few days late. That appeal is about 3 condo towers, 21, 25, and 29 stories high, which is a mere 100 feet at most away from these towers. It involves the demolition of a heritage designated business that houses about 200 or so artists and creatives, an amazing charity dance studio, and the most spectacular and eclectic, unique spaces where aerial artists and circus performers all live together, eking out their meager existence. They make our city the vibrant place that it is, but they will be evicted and will be gone forever. The artists will be replaced by condos. Now, make no mistake, I don't believe for a second that Councillor Bravo is in bed with the developers. I believe she's a good person who got into politics for all the right reasons and to make a difference. But there's something incredibly wrong with the system if the community isn't being represented by our elected leaders, where the city instead.
Excuse me.
Point of personal privilege, Chair.
You need to speak to the item and not to the councillor herself. Speak to the item itself. You don't need to, do that. That's inappropriate. You may continue. Speak to the item and the condo.
Yes, we're fighting the community, and the city is fighting the community, and this has to stop. We know that we're not alone, that these are issues throughout the city. So we are here to ask once again, we're asking you to stand up and fight, to look at what is happening with our neighbors to the south. One man is trying to control everything, And there are many who will acquiesce to his power, but there's some who are prepared to fight. And so, if your hands are tied because of provincial decisions, then you need to decide whether you will acquiesce or stand up and fight. But don't fight us. Fight the policies that are putting all of the power in the hands of the billionaire developers. Join us in saying no to the developers. Join us at the Ontario Land Tribunal. Join us in the courts. And join us in protecting artists and heritage buildings and standing up for the future of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant or the speaker? Seeing none, thank you. Next up is Ermina Ayoa. You here? Online? Are you there?
Hi, I'm here.
Okay, can you speak?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And speak to the item, please. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, hold on. Let me get my. Good morning, Council. My name is Armina Ayuyao, and I'm here as a resident deeply concerned about the future of our 1 kilometer neighborhood. While today focuses on 158 and 190 Sterling Road, we are facing 4 massive developments simultaneously, each approved in isolation but destined to overwhelm our community when combined. 221 Sterling Road alone proposes 3 towers, 29, 25, and 20 stories, plus 2 18-story buildings on Bloor. Taken together, we're looking at nearly 2,000 new units, a tidal wave of density that will permanently alter our neighborhood's livability. Approving these projects one by one is like allowing 5 gas stations on a single block. Individually, each seems harmless. Together, traffic chaos, fumes, and a ruined landscape. That's exactly what's happening here. Transit. The Bloor subway is already at 120% capacity. Thousands of new riders will cripple it. Schools, overwhelmed today. Where do 400 plus new children go? Parks, privately owned public spaces are not real parkland, just developer loopholes. YIMBYs treat housing policy like a binary choice. Either approve every tower without question or be labeled anti-housing, using Bill 23 as cover to avoid meaningful planning. We call it failure by 1,000 cuts. We demand the following. Pause approvals for a cumulative impact study. Cap heights at the 2014 OMB mediation agreement at 3 to 4 stories. No more gas station style planning. Guarantee infrastructure first. Schools, transit, parks. Real affordability, not loopholes. The province doesn't forbid this. The city just isn't trying. We urge council to review the 1996 King Spadina secondary plan. This was the foundational policy requiring master planning before individual approvals. Council claims it can't evaluate cumulative effects, yet the King Spadina study proved otherwise. In the 1990s, the city rezoned an entire district only after studying shadows, transit, and heritage. Why the double standard for our neighborhood? We demand the same rigor, but not the same pitfalls 20 years later. The province allows this flexibility. The question is, will the council use it? The province isn't mandating reckless density. Rejecting them isn't anti-housing, it's pro-community. Municipalities retain tools to push back if council has the will to use them. Council members, you decide. Approve blindly, creating an unlivable mess, or lead, ensuring growth with real community benefits. The people here, today and tomorrow, deserve your courage. Pause, plan, build right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, thank you. Brett Wright-Campbell? Yeah, that's me. Okay, you have 5 minutes.
On? Okay. My name's Brett Wright-Campbell. I'm the 4th generation living on Sterling Road. My niece would be the 5th generation living on Sterling Road. I've lived there all my life. I'm 62 years old. We've had factories, some of the biggest industry in Canada. That's why it's the Junction Triangle. It was the primary hub of industry in our city. In that region, in that neighborhood, on that street for decades, we've had no problems. They've provided parking for their people, and they live side by side with us, providing jobs. Many of us worked, our parents worked in those factories. They're all gone now, and of course, they're being turned into condos. We knew that was coming, and we were looking forward to it and working with the developers. We actually approached the developers when they first came into the neighborhood to see how we could get along. We knew we were strapped for parking in our neighborhood. It's very small. It's an old community, and some of the developers seemed to be on side with us. As the project continued over the last few years, things have changed. We've lost our parking. They've taken it away, existing parking. We're not asking for new parking, but they've taken away and narrowed the street. Now the street that was narrowed to accommodate the development is flooded with cars all down the side. They're illegally parking there because there's nowhere to park now. It was a wider street, now it's narrow. Now they're parking along 213 Sterling. They're gonna build this tower, which we're discussing, right across from that. It's gonna have a daycare there. People are gonna come and pick up the kids at the daycare. That street is now narrowed to one lane because the parking was lost. Good planning, like we had hoped in the beginning, which our planners dropped the ball on, would have taken the advantage of a brand new development and widened the street and provided parking, provided the bike path, provided everything needed. They didn't. They actually took away the parking and narrowed the street. Now it's a catastrophe. Now we come home, we drive through our neighborhood for 2 or 3 hours looking for a parking spot at the end of the day. During the day, when we're at work, these parking spots would have accommodated the developer. He's going to put amenities in there, shops and that. We've got a coffee shop. Their customers come in, stop, pick us up and go. It's great for business. The daycare center is going to be big. It's going to be a lot of people dropping their kids off in the morning along that street I just told you about. These are all negatives that have impacted us, a community that approached the developer from the beginning to try to avoid this. So this tells me that in the city of Toronto, when communities reach out and try, and not NIMBYs, we are willing to work. We know it's coming. We're happy to see it in some cases, to work with the developers and say, how can we both make this work for both of us? We'll give, we'll take, you take. And it's not happening. The city jumped in, and they pretty much, the planners jumped in and overrode everything. They did not listen to the community inputs. They did not listen to us. The developer listened to us more than the city did. Castle Point themselves said he thinks some of the stuff they're doing is ridiculous. That's the initial purchaser of the land. So now here we are. In times, we could have been here in better times. We know what's going on to the south of us with Trump. He's slashing every protection for everything down there. He's slashing trade deals, legal trade deals we had with them. And these are really bad times for all of us. There's going to be a lot of jobs at stake. They're going to be putting jobs into this development. But one of the things they're going to be putting in, well, let me say it this way. They put in a law a few years ago to protect the heritage building. Now they want to bypass that law. The law says you can't build higher. That's Canada's first tallest building, the Mocha building. And now the developer came in, we had an agreement, the residents went to the OMB, nothing is going to be built higher than that building, it's protected. Now they're going to just slash that protection a couple years later because the developer wants to? What is this, Donald Trump's United States? You know what I mean. This law is there for a reason, not to protect Mocha from the residents building 1 story on their 2-story house. It's there to protect from developers blocking the view of this historic building. And now we're going to just total disregard it a couple years later because the developer wants to. It sets a nasty precedence in the city, in this country, in this nation, that laws for protecting environment, buildings, structures, heritage can be so quickly disregarded for the big buck. I feel for the developer. These are hard times, steel prices and everything. He's saying he wants to build higher to compensate for the cost. But you got to put your foot down somewhere and say, no, this is protected. And if you start eroding at our protections here, you do it everywhere. I'm done. We've had a lot of discussions on this. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Okay, no questions. Thank you for your deputation today.
Thank you.
Normanda Ganawardena? Online, okay. You have 5 minutes, go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Narmada Ganawardena, and I'm a lawyer at Weir Folds LLP. We have recently been retained to represent Philip Scher, who is a representative for South Perth and Stirling Road Residents Association, and we have been authorized to speak on behalf of the association today. We submitted written submissions on behalf of the association, and I will be making some brief oral submissions to supplement the written submissions to indicate to you our request that the applications before you either be deferred to allow further community consultation, and if not, refused. The association is an unincorporated association representing 140 homeowners in the area. The association opposes the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 158 Stirling Road and 190 Stirling Road that is before the Community Council today. The association's primary concern is with preserving the heritage property at 158 Stirling Road. 158 Stirling Road is a designated property under the Ontario Heritage Act. There are many listed attributes for 158 Stirling as specified in the City of Toronto bylaw 425-2022. Specifically, I would like to emphasize that a noted heritage attribute is, quote, the scale, form, and massing of the 10-story building with the penthouse. Permitting the proposed development in its current form undermines the prominence of the heritage building at 158 Stirling. The association has a long history of involvement with the development applications on the subject site, providing input on applications for over 14 years. Notably, the association was involved in the prior applications and appeals for the subject site from around 2011 until 2015. This matter went before the Ontario Municipal Board as a settlement hearing, made possible in part due to a settlement between the association and then owners of the subject site. The settlement between the association and then owners of the subject site required that in order to preserve the heritage value of 158 Stirling Road, maximum height limits were included on the subject site at 8 and 10 stories. The OPA and the ZBA before you today proposes a development well in excess of the 8 and 10-story height maximums, including a 31-story building and a 28-story building. The association submits that the size and scale of the proposed development on the subject site negatively impacts the scale, form, and massing attributes of the heritage building. The prominence of the 10-story heritage building will be overshadowed by the construction of these high-rise towers proposed at 28 and 31 stories. The prior settlement between the association and then owners of the subject site was predicated in part on the proposed development's conservation of the heritage attributes associated with the heritage building. To allow the OPA and ZBA as proposed would be contrary to that prior resolution that led to the settlement. Approval of the application would also not be consistent with the provincial planning statement, specifically policy 4.6, which requires a conservation of protected heritage property, such as a heritage building at 158 Stirling, including as it relates to applications within the immediate vicinity of the subject site. We understand that city staff are largely in support of the applications, but we believe that there is a better solution that can be achieved that balances the density of the site while protecting the heritage features. The association would welcome an opportunity to engage in discussions with the applicant to find a more appropriate built form for the proposed development. However, the only way that these conversations can take place is if this matter is deferred or you recommend refusal of the applications. Both of these decisions will allow time for the association to engage in meaningful discussions with the applicant. The association notes that there have been attempts at community meetings to have broader discussions with the community, but these discussions have not been productive. Rather, we think that these conversations are more appropriately addressed in meetings between the applicant, the association, and other select members that represent the community interests. In addition to the above, the association also has other planning concerns with the proposed development, but we anticipate that most of these concerns will be resolved by virtue of addressing the massing and scale to be more appropriate from a heritage perspective. As such, we request that you defer or recommend
10
refusal
seconds.
of these applications before you today, and subject to any questions that you may have. Those are my submissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, thank you. That's the end of the list here. Councillor Perks has a question for staff.
Yeah, so there were a number of issues raised there, and I sort of want to interrogate them a bit. First, the issue of heritage and views. Does the city have the legal ability to protect view corridors for a building just because we declare it a heritage building?
Through the chair, the answer is no.
No. So we're not in a position where, in order to protect the people's ability to see a heritage asset, we can demand that buildings be lower. The city does not have that authority. If we tried to write that into planning policy, it wouldn't survive a test.
That's correct. There are in the official plan a schedule of views that do have some level of protection that we've identified, but that does not include the.
And that's a very small list. I think that's like
small list of
Queen's Park
views,
and maybe
correct.
2 other things, right? Yeah. This used to be employment lands, and it went through the municipal comprehensive review. How was it decided that these lands would be converted to residential?
The conversion of the lands was the result of an Ontario Municipal Board settlement.
So the City of Toronto attempted to protect these. We went to the board and looked at it, and the best we could get out of that was settling to allow, under certain conditions, that this could happen.
That's correct. Generally, the lands at the south end of Lord Perth Sterling, just north of Dundas, retain an employment designation. And the lands north, generally, of the Mocha building have a mixed-use designation. The report that's in front of Community Council today does not change those designations.
Okay. And in Ontario law, an applicant has the right at any time to apply for a rezoning, even if they've already done one.
That's correct.
And the City of Toronto doesn't have final authority on that rezoning. The final authority rests with the tribunal and then the minister.
In the event of an appeal, there would be a referral to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and they would have the powers that council would have. And there are certain matters that are subject to ministerial approval.
Okay. I think those were the main themes that I was curious about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bravo?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to pick up on that. So you've said that the settlement that was referenced by residents and their frustration with the fact that the landowner can apply for further height and density as being done is allowed in provincial legislation. So often residents and some of the deputants today have raised with me the desire to challenge provincial planning legislation through the municipal process or using municipal tools. Is that possible? Given that, as I understand it, we are creatures here in municipalities of the province and can't even determine our own elections or preserve a bike lane in my ward. Can you tell us, can we fight provincial planning rules in here at this community council and at council?
Through the chair, I'm going to refer that question to legal staff.
Thank you. Through the chair, the province has jurisdiction over land use planning matters in the province of Ontario. Through the Planning Act, it establishes the process, the rules. It delegates certain decision-making powers to municipalities, but municipalities have to follow the rules.
And what are the powers that a municipality has to defend the public interest, act in the public interest, and how have they been used so far in this process?
Through the chair, staff have pursued a number of public interest matters through this application. That includes securing a number of community benefits, which I'd be happy to review, ensuring minimized impact on the neighborhood, securing an improved public realm. There's numerous matters that community planning staff and other staff look at as we review these applications.
Can you confirm that I have not been involved in any negotiations or backroom conversations that you're aware of with this developer or any other developer?
Through the chair, that's correct. I'm not aware if the councilor's involved. in
Yeah,
those
so you've done
discussions.
your work directly through the planning process, and I have not been at the table. Around the employment land conversions, this happened before I was elected. At the time, was there any direction to staff to do a traffic plan, a traffic study, a mobility study in this area to understand, prior to the conversion, what would be the impact of allowing mixed-use residential in this area and the anticipated heights that would come along with it and density? Was that work done? Were you directed to do that work by council?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of any study through the 2015 approval, if that's.
So the approval of the conversion of employment lands, which has rightfully been identified as the original challenge here, is a core part of this, and there wasn't any work that was done to look at the anticipated impacts in the community, particularly around mobility, of which I'm very familiar. Thank you. I grew up in this area. The questions that were raised around traffic challenges and the additional residents, the addition of a childcare center, which is desperately needed in that area. Can anyone comment on what work is being done or can be done with relation to improving the challenges of mobility? There's parking challenges, there's traffic congestion challenges, and the one deputant rightfully said there's also cycling challenges in this area.
Through the chair, I think for this proposal is part of the overall. Sorry, I'm right behind you. This proposal is part of the block with the private street that provides a lot of, just from the daycare perspective, it provides a lot of informal hardscape space for pick-up drop-off activities. The street design for Sterling was reduced in part to improve the crossing additions and the relationship to the public park on the north side, where a lot of times adjacent to the public park, on-street parking is not recommended. The site itself does provide resident parking and visitor parking in accordance with our current bylaws, which look to try and reduce on-site parking to improve to reduce the sort of car trips that a site like this can generate. So to try and improve and incentivize transit trips and multimodal trips. There's actually a cycling plan across the north side of these site frontages. And we're trying to build up sort of the safe crossings.
Thank you. Thank you. Just one more question. How many affordable housing units and on what condition will they be conveyed? And how many childcare spaces are included in this development? And do we expect that they will be used by new residents raising their families in the neighborhood?
Through the chair, the application is currently proposing 8 on-site affordable housing units on Block 5B. These were secured as part of the 2015 OMB settlement, and they're going to be conveyed to the city at a nominal fee. And the application also proposes a 64-space childcare facility, which has been increased from the original 36-space daycare facility that was also secured from that 2015 approval.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other questions, we'll go to speakers. Councilor Bravo.
Thank you, Chair. I have a motion. I will be forwarding this item to council without recommendation so that there's additional time to consider some of the issues that have been raised here. I want to say that I've had numerous conversations even before getting elected with the members of this community who are frustrated. I want to make clear that I agree that employment land conversions create these kinds of pressures, not only on residents who are long-established residents in the community, but also on existing employment uses, which are being encroached on. And I am concerned about that. I've spoken repeatedly since before being elected and since being elected about the value that the jobs belt has to the City of Toronto, and Deputant raised the issue of tariffs. We need to be able to make things, build things in our city. And one of the features of Davenport is that historically, it's one of the wards and has been the ward with the greatest number of people living and working in the same community, which is excellent, excellent design. It avoids congestion and it creates a complete community in my view. When these conversions happen, there is no thought historically to what it will mean in terms of the kinds of applications that will come and what that means for the mobility, for mobility needs in the community. These are very narrow streets. There is a competing interest here in moving around. The workers that come into a factory do need to move around, and I think that we have to be real about the pressure that is being experienced in South Junction Triangle. It's real. I also want to recognize the advocacy of community members, and we have heard the need to have childcare. So it is a benefit to have 64 new spaces when we have families that are desperate to find a childcare space, and that isn't being provided. So I would like to say that the challenge of pick up and drop off, I think, has to be addressed if we actually fulfill our commitment to expand transit, to make it reliable, and to ensure that that we are allowing people to use an option other than a car to drop off and pick up their children. There's been enormous work that's been done by planning staff, and I want to thank them because planning staff are professionals who are highly regulated in law, who have to work under a provincial legislative regime, which is very bossy, and we do not have the power at the municipal level to test and challenge provincial legislation. That is not a constitutional reality in Canada. Municipalities are allowed to make rules that the province says we are allowed to make. The province also says what we can do, what we cannot do, and what we must do. And I think we have to be really clear on that. I would invite the advocacy of community to direct itself to the provincial government. There has been a real, I think, lack of effort and coordination to address some of the really significant concerns in relation to the good faith process of, in this neighborhood, as one of the deputants said, coming forward and saying, yes, we support this, or we understand that this is happening, let's make it work. But there are no limits to what a developer can do in terms of coming back again and again to ask for changes. The reason that planning staff engage with this process and make recommendations is to ensure that no stone is left unturned to try to secure some benefits. I want to also make clear that I do not involve myself personally in these discussions. That is not my role. Planning staff are professionals who are applying their duty and fulfilling it under the law, and I am trusting their recommendations in addition to pushing them to continually ask for more for community within what is allowed under my powers and my responsibilities as a city councillor. But I want to leave this one word. There is pain being caused, and this is not the only situation in Davenport. If we look at Old Weston Road in St. Clair, there's massive, massive conversions that cost jobs, and that creates the kinds of problems that we're seeing here today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bravo. Councillor Perks?
I want to talk about two things on this item. First, I want to talk about what local councillors can do and what Councillor Bravo has done. And secondly, what's the money issue behind all of this? So a while ago, Mayor Chow appointed me to be the chair of Planning and Housing. Literally, the first call I got was from Councillor Bravo, and it was, what can we do to protect employment and maker spaces? And we set up working tables involving senior planners, involving policy staff, involving economic development. And we've navigated some stuff around the edges that we can do. But basically, everywhere we turn, we just run into this blank wall called provincial planning law. And just so folks understand, since this development happened, the province of Ontario has decided to make it even worse. Literally the day before they called the most recent provincial election, the day before, they wrote us a letter saying, oh, all those deals that you did that protected affordable housing in exchange for employment land, we're voiding all of those. We are no longer saying that you can require affordable housing in exchange for employment land conversions. Oh, and by the way, that whole process that you had so that we could at least get to a hearing on employment land conversions, we're eliminating that too. The extent to which this provincial government is selling off the future of Toronto's economy is astonishing. You know, it's one thing to go on CNN and say, I'll fight for Ontario's economy, but when your actions, the things you actually do, make it impossible for people to make things and generate jobs in the city of Toronto, somebody has to call you to account. And Councillor Bravo, Councillor Fletcher, and other members of this community council have been doing our best. And I hope that the people we heard from in the community, as frustrated as they are with us, because you can't talk to Doug Ford, so you come and talk to us. As frustrated as you are with us, please join us in pushing back. Now, that takes me to the why is this all happening? There was a really interesting article in the Toronto Star at the beginning of the week. A bunch of developers are suing real estate speculators. Here's how the real estate industry in Toronto has worked for the last 20 years. If you want to build a big condo building, at some point you have to borrow the money to do the construction. That's your construction financing. In order to get your construction financing, you have to prove that you have sold 60% of the units. Are they selling these units to people who want to live in them? The answer is no. 60% of all the single and bachelor units in condominium buildings in the city of Toronto were sold to speculators, people who literally are playing the stock market. Condominium units are not for people to live in. They're commodities used to finance construction. So what's happened is now that, you know, we've had a few years of tougher interest rates and steel and aluminum prices are going up because of tariffs, these condo guys are calling the loans that the investors did, and the investors were all investing on margins, so they're all going bankrupt. None of this had anything to do with building housing. None of this had anything to do with helping young families get a place to live. None of this had anything to do with affordability. It had everything to do with people speculating. I mean, this isn't all that far different from the global financial crisis, where everything was just going into speculating on people's ability to pay their mortgages. This has just been a game to treat the land in Toronto as a way for guys to make paper profits buying and selling commodity condo units. And as a result, neighborhoods are being crushed. And in order to get away with that, they have taken away the power of local councillors like Councillor Bravo. They've taken away the voice of the community. They've limited the ability of the planning staff to advocate, just so some guys could make money trading paper. It's exhausting.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher to speak.
Thank you for that, Councillor Perks, because it really a brilliant way of putting that for us to understand when we're looking at what's happened. I'm just going to speak today because Sterling Road and the Carla Dundas area are very, very similar. They were factory areas, working areas, industrial areas that in the first tranche of change was about free trade. Free trade decimated all of those places. So I had the Colgate factory, the Wrigley's factory, all the factories in the east end of Toronto where people would go to get their easy job, first job. They're all gone. And so that was the first thing that happened. The second tranche was the city stepping up when we had real control over our own planning processes and saying, we want to make sure we keep jobs here. They're not core employment any longer. There's no Atlantic Packaging there, but they're important jobs. There's some manufacturing, light manufacturing, creative. The East End was just full of creative until it's been decimated. And so what can we have? Well, we can have live work, we can have condo, we can have work that are smaller, I'll call them shops in larger areas. So in the old building at 380 Carlaw, that was a Dom Tar factory. They're all small businesses, a welding, a this, a that, small manufacturing, but there's 400 jobs in that actual building. So that was the second tranche where we had the ability to really be careful when we asked for rezoning, we asked for live work, we were creative, and that started to drift, wanting more. We don't want to put jobs in there, but that was the city's position, that you can't just take away everything that had made so much of a contribution to the community. And now we're really in the third tranche. And I think Councillor Perks was so clear when you spoke about provincial policy, because if anybody lives near any of the Ontario line or any of the stations, those are all areas that are just determined to have density, maximum density, and they use ministerial zoning orders for that. So this Carlaw, which has converted buildings, live work, architects, jewelry, a lot of, I forget what you called them, Councillor Perks, you had a name for that, but
Makers.
makers, full of it, and great spaces. That is now, for the Ontario line, had an MZO going from 400 jobs to 0 jobs, going from a building, industrial building, to a 130 and 140-story condo, going for 1 bedrooms for investors. It will now start to shape and change that part of the city. And that's based on the transit line, which I think everybody needs to understand, that how the provincial government is paying for the stations for all the transit is by super density to developers. So that now the developers are going to have to pay for the station, and the only way they can pay and make their contribution is 30, 40, 50-story buildings, right nestled, right next to your 2-story, your small apartment building. And it is a shock to the system. It is a really, I thought they had money. They certainly have spent a lot on the crosstown, inadvertently, by the way, that to have enough left over to be able to actually build the stations. The TTC, we build our stations. There's no developer giveaway in order to build the stations for the TTC. But this is, again, a very friendly, developer-friendly government, as we know from the Greenbelt, from the highway, from all of these MZOs. And so I had a meeting last week where my community was very shocked. It was a small building, and then they realized, because everything's been online until now. Remember the pandemic, all of these planning issues have been online. It was shocking to see the TOC, the transit-oriented community, and the heightened densities. And online, we would have a lot of people join from groups like More Neighbors and others that would just say, well, just build whatever you want. Just build it. We need housing. We need housing. But Councillor Perks, I wish you were on some of those calls, because it's investor housing. It's not housing for people. And I, for one, would like to join with anybody that wants to fight this on the grassroots level, because the day of reckoning is coming. The day of reckoning is coming, but we do not have the strength and power that we used to have in our own municipal planning regimen.
Thank you. So we do have a motion on the table to refer this to council without any, forward to council without recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item is TE 21.5, 152 to 164 Bathurst Street and 623 to 627 Richmond Street West, zoning bylaw amendment application decision report. We have speakers on this item. Matthew Medeiros, are you here? You have 5 minutes.
Quick 5 minutes, but the past 2. Thank you, Councillor Perks, Councillor Fletcher. Also, you said help us, so I don't know how, but let me know how and I'll try to help. A compose myself after all that. 5 minutes, Jesus Christ, my ADHD is kicking in and half a minute's gone. So, name's Matthew. I live on Richmond Street in a house that was constructed in the 1980s. Like many other homes along that block and in that area. I grew up in that area. My grandparents took a, I'm just going to try to, there's too much stuff to go through. Went to that area in the 70s. My mother went to school there in St. Mary's. I went to school there. I would go to my grandparents' house every single day, eat breakfast there, across the street, go to the school. And my uncle lived on Bathurst, like it's the whole family in that whole neighborhood. Whole Portuguese, well, at the time Portuguese, but, so I'm just like trying to compose myself. So to get to and I know other community members will speak about some of these points, so I'll try to rush through some of them. I'll try to focus on the numbers. So the initial approved proposal was for 18 stories, 59.9 meters. They're now asking for 29, so 90.9 meters. This is half the size increase, as councilors and everybody else has spoken about. This also has to do with the proximity to the Ontario line. But this would, as you say, drastically increase the density patterns of the area, changing the neighborhood. So on page 8, the amendment, the application says that it attempts to match the density patterns of as one of the cited major objectives. This completely decimates that. In the proposal, it also compares it to other developments. There is nothing close to the size of this development. So on the Bathurst, on the east side, it's 12 stories. On Adelaide, 16 stories. The transit-oriented communities at King and Bathurst, and so this is Richmond and Bathurst. This is a residential neighborhood, now mixed use. Both are 25 stories. Both are less dense and less tall than this proposal. Other ones are 18 stories, 17 stories, 17 stories, 13 stories, 14 stories. I could list off a bunch of them. All in the immediate vicinity and none as dense or as tall as this property or this proposal. Regarding the heritage site, when the site at 164 Bathurst was established as a heritage site, one of the quoted issues or aspects of that was maintaining and supporting the character that surrounds the area as a historic anchor. So this drastically alters the site and acts as a serious threat to maintaining the position and the very character of the building and that area, and also that area as part of Queen West. So this dwarfs this historic site. There's nothing near, like, in comparison to this. I want to quickly try to read this that I wrote last night. And I know it's the details that oftentimes are important, but I think there's a place for what I wrote here. So yes, change has to occur, but this changes the entire character of the neighborhood. Looking down from the corner of Bathurst and Queen Street last night on my walk home, I imagined how different the site will make this neighborhood feel. Like Kensington Market that was under threat in the 60s, or from the Walmart on its edge, or the threat of Walmart appearing on its edge in 2014, the community rallied and voiced concern. This condo and the sheer size and density of it is to this neighborhood and the heritage site of Queen West and the small communities who occupy it what the threat of Walmart or the 60s Spadina Expressway proposal was to Kensington at the time. Both these projects border the community, and yet the community and city recognize the impact that these projects would have. It's not just about what's within the line of what we call Heritage District, so the Queen West Heritage Conservation District, but so too what falls on and straddles its border. Please don't ruin this neighborhood and its history. Please respect it and its residents, its history and its future. Don't let us lose our neighborhoods. To the community and the city council members and all those who work behind the scenes or in front, please don't give up on fighting to maintain the quality of what once made, and although maybe to a lesser degree now, continues to make City of Wonderful Place, unless it was Toronto. I know there's pressure from the province. I know there are desires of the developers and their shareholders for those who don't live in our neighborhoods, but please listen to those who live here, who spend our days, nights, weekends, weekdays here. This is our home. That may not mean much to those who have a vested interest in maximizing the most that they can from us or our spaces. And I don't say that with disrespect or to vilify anyone, but please don't let those voices outweigh ours. because it is our health and our lives that are being used to pay for these decisions. I think of the 90-some-year-old wheelchair-bound woman who lives next door to what is now a hole in the ground, what used to be formerly 625 Richmond, which is part of this proposed site. I recall as a very young child visiting her with my grandmother or speaking to her through the fence at St. Mary's during recess. The rental unit or the house that was next to her was torn down, leaving a large gap in the upper right-hand corner that's since been repaired. I could feel and hear the demolitions from my own home down the street. I think of her and how disruptive and destructive this must be to her, and how her house must take tenfold. This woman is living out her final years pressed up against this. And although this development will disrupt her and the community regardless, I raise this point not to shame anyone, but to highlight that there are real people, histories, and lives being lived out in this community and neighborhood.
I gave you an extra minute.
Histories, it's the last sentence. Histories and lives that can and will be fundamentally changed forever based on the decision or lack thereof that you make, or the effort to try to fight and help make today. Please don't let this go through as it is, and please don't set this precedent. Please help us.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Next up is Katerina. Yeah. Katerina Salvatore. Katerina Salvatore, no? Okay. Cameron Khan, 5 minutes.
Okay, good morning. Thank you. My name's Cameron Khan, and I live in the community where this proposal at the corner of Bathurst and Richmond is being considered. And I'm here to urge this council to reject this proposal as it stands until it has undergone the appropriate revisions to fit into the neighborhood. So this morning, I'd like to make the case as to why approving this development as is poses serious detrimental impacts, not just to the immediate community, but that it sets a dangerous precedent for future developments west of Spadina, which have largely been mid-rise developments and in their built form. Now, I just want to first of all be clear, I am not anti-development. For nearly 20 years, I was an active member of the Wellington Place Neighborhood Association. I've worked closely with developers. I've worked with multiple city councilors, with city staff, and with the community to ensure that developments are contributing to the social and the demographic and the economic fabric of the city. So let me briefly explain why I think this development should not be accepted as it stands. So the developers made the argument that the approval it already had for 18 stories or 60 meters should be increased to 33 stories or 113 meters because it is located in a transit-oriented community. I do realize that there has been revisions and there's some modest reductions in the scale of this building to 29 stories or 98 meters. I think the rationale that has been presented is that this is in a transit-oriented community and that density should be centered around transportation hubs, specifically stations around the Ontario line. Now, having said that, developments that have already been approved on future subway stops at Spadina and Queen, those have been approved for 15 stories or 57 meters on the north side of Queen and 14 stories or 52 meters on the south side of Queen. I think we can all agree that Spadina and Queen is a major intersection in the downtown core. It has a much larger scale than what exists at Bathurst and Richmond Street. Yet the proposed development is over 40 meters taller than the tallest building approved at Spadina and Queen. Even if we look at the development that has been approved at Bathurst and King, again, another major intersection in the downtown core, that has been approved for 25 stories or 89 meters. So this proposal here at the corner of Bathurst and Richmond is higher than either of the developments that sit literally on top of the transit stations at those two locations on the Ontario line. So this clearly does not make any sense. And I think because it doesn't make sense, I fear that it's going to set a dangerous precedent for applications and developments that have already been approved, which I suspect will come back to seek additional heights and densities, as well as future developments in the area. And I think having spent 20 years in the Wellington Place Neighborhood Association, I know that those future applications are not going to be for 98 meters to match the height here. They're going to be for 110 meters. The next one will be for 125 meters. And ultimately, this domino effect will have a transformative impact on the livability in this community, which again, as I want to remind everyone, has largely been mid-rise in its built form. So I'm imploring this community council to reject this proposal as it stands today until it has been appropriately scaled to fit into the neighborhood. And on behalf of many others in the community who are not able to be here in person today, I just want to thank you for considering our collective feedback.
Thank you. Any questions for the deputant? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Councilor Deputy Mayor Malik, this is your item.
Thank you very much. I have a few questions for the staff, just picking up on what the speakers raised. Can you please address some of the concerns that were raised about the height of the application on this site?
Through the chair, a bit of history on this site. As it's been alluded to, in 2023, the site was approved for an 18-story, approximately 60-meter mixed-use building. In 2024, a year later, the applicant made a request to community planning to discuss a height increase. At the time, they were proposing a 39-story building from 18 to 39 stories. Staff at the time expressed concerns regarding the height and asked them to reduce it. A couple months after that meeting we had with the applicant made their formal rezoning submission or zoning bylaw amendment application for a 33-story building. Staff also expressed with the 33-story building, we were still concerned about the height. So the past few months, we've been communicating with the applicant to reduce the height to what is before you today, which is 29 stories.
I'll just add a key component for the height reduction was to seek the elimination of shadow on the north side of Queen Street in line with the West Queen West Heritage Conservation District, so as to give prominence to the heritage buildings on the north side of Queen and retain that retail-oriented street.
Thank you. Similar to what we're contending with that was raised in the previous item, we are bound by provincial legislation around, building community benefit and also transit-oriented communities. And can you also share what has changed in the last several years related to that and what constraints that puts on us at the city in terms of accepting or rejecting applications?
So through the chair, much has been made, discussion made today around the provincial changes to the legislation in terms of the Planning Act. So Section 37 of the Planning Act has been dramatically changed such that we now have the community benefits charge. So one key component that has changed with this application is there's now the addition of 9 affordable housing units, which we were able to secure as 100% of the community benefits charge. So that is certainly a change, but that is the maximum extent that we were allowed to seek from the applicant.
Right. Can you speak to the kind of rules that the city is bound by when it comes to transit-oriented communities?
Sure.
Through you, Chair, the site is located within SASP 761, which delineates the King Bathurst protected major transit station area. And it's also within the downtown growth center, and as mentioned, close to the future transit lot. And therefore, it's an area of the city where the policies of the official plan and the location of the site in close proximity to the transit station encourages intensification to provide home. So as my colleague mentioned, this was originally proposed to be 39 stories, and then it was further reduced to 29.
Okay, another one of the concerns that was raised was around precedent, and a few developments were listed. Those are, and I just want to understand a little bit more about the precedent that was shared, how that lines up with what we're seeing. And I know that when it comes to applications around Ontario Line sites, we're still in process with a number of those. So just kind of understanding how this fits into the precedent and addressing that concern.
Through the chair, so certainly in response to the TOC and the MZO that was put in place for the King Bathurst TOC, that has created what we would call a new height threshold for the area around King and Bathurst and within 800 meters of that area. So as far as precedent goes, we evaluate each site on its own merit. So, if a site is big enough, if it can accommodate all the technical components to whatever mixed-use development or whatever is proposed, we certainly evaluate those on its own merits and the specific impacts associated with whatever built form is proposed. So in this particular case, a big focus was on responding to the density aspirations, but also looking at the impacts on Queen Street West in terms of the protection of shadow on the north side of Queen.
And there's a number of concerns raised just about the impact of construction and movement in the area around, I'm sure, traffic, transportation. We're very familiar with it. I don't live far from the site as well. So, what degree of engagement has there been with the community to address some of those very practical concerns?
Through the chair, there's certainly been a community consultation meeting that we've had, and this issue of traffic and congestion and construction-related impacts has certainly been discussed. Through the subsequent phases of the development review process, we will be securing a construction management plan, which will speak to issues of noise, dust, vibration, traffic routes associated with construction. The developer is well aware of this. In fact, the developer has already had to deal with issues around the heritage buildings and the appropriate maintenance of those heritage buildings. So we're certainly looking to, continue that push. But there will definitely be more discussions around construction management as the application progresses.
Okay. Thank you. Speakers on the item?
Thank you very much, and I do appreciate everyone who has come and spoken today and for the engagement on this development. And I am moving a motion, yes, thank you. And I have a motion to move forward to make sure that we are continuing the work to engage the community and to address the very real concerns that have been shared around the proximity around construction management and all the aspects that are of great concern to us in our neighborhood, and especially a neighborhood like this one, where we have so much activity right up against each other, where there is the heritage considerations alongside this being our home, and that as we welcome new neighbors and new development, that there is the care and the commitment to working with you on that. And I do believe that that the work that has been done to make sure that we have pushed the developer to come more in line with what our expectations are for the neighborhood is really important. And what has been shared here will be part of our continued considerations about the growth that is happening in the neighborhood. And this motion in front of us allows us to continue that engagement and that work together as we move forward. Again, I want to make sure that we are also very clear about what continues to constrain us when it comes to development in our city. So many of the tools and levers that we've had in the past around pushing back have been removed by provincial legislation. And even in those constrained kind of contexts that we find ourselves in, to be able to secure affordable housing, to have the care around heritage and public realm, and to continue to insist on and direct that dialogue with community is really, really important. And we'll keep a focus on our work together, especially in this neighborhood. I've noted down all the considerations that have been shared. Those are important ones for us. They have been part of our engagement and our work on this site. And my commitment remains that we will work together on this, and we will move forward with this motion in order to demonstrate that commitment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, I'll move the amendment. No, sorry. Move the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. As amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item. TE 21.6, 707 Dundas Street West and 327 Bathurst Street, City-initiated official plan amendment application. We have one speaker on this item, Rebecca Keenan. from Scadding Court Community Center. Are you here? Okay, you have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, councilors. My name is Rebecca Keenan. I'm the Director of Operations for Scadding Court Community Center. With me is my colleague Bij Melamed Turkish. I'm here today to speak in favor of the recommendations for planning staff. As you may have gathered from the site description, our status as an AOC gives us the flexibility to respond directly to the needs of our community. Our nonprofit status allows us to apply for a range of funding and to partner easily with other agencies, from our adjacent Sanderson Library to Parkdale Queen West Community Health Center to TMU's Diversity Institute, in order to further our work. We have an early on center, a settlement services department, business incubation at our shipping container market, entrepreneurship programs for seniors, urban agriculture, aquaponics, children's camps, after-school programming, recreation from basketball to women's boxing, programs for youth, an alternative high school, the Oasis Skateboard Factory, sewing and social enterprises, free meals, food boxes, and just about every cultural celebration you could imagine. We use every inch of the building and surrounding land. At last count, we have over 60 programs and services. We work hard, we love what we do, and we're bursting at the seams. We have wait lists, more demand for our gym than gym time, and have to turn away donations due to space limitations. We've been described as the heart of the community. Some people use the center literally every day. In talks about a potential redevelopment, one of the things I hear most is, how will you keep services going during construction? People rely on what we offer, and I'm glad to see that keeping service disruption to a minimum during redevelopment is a proposed addition to the 2012 council-approved redevelopment and revitalization guiding principles. I'm also excited about being part of an incredible city building opportunity. Adopting planning's recommendation gives the site so much potential. We're a corner site at Bathurst and Dundas Street West, close to transit and amenities. Building affordable housing above an expanded Scadding Court, library, and indoor pool while we're in the midst of a housing crisis seems like a slam dunk for the future of our city. I'd like to thank Deputy Mayor Malik for her advocacy and support of Scadding Court. Thank you as well to City Planning and to Create TO for their inclusion of community voices in this project. Discussions about our redevelopment have been ongoing for decades, with it appearing on council agenda since 2011. I'm really excited about the opportunity to finally expand our space and amplify our impact. In closing, please vote for planning's recommendations and help build a community where everyone has a home and the chance to thrive.
Thank you. Any questions for the Deputy? No, thank you. Deputy Mayor Malik, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Rebecca and the team from Scadding, and for speaking to us today, and also for the work that has brought us to this point in our decision making as we move forward. And we know that Scadding Court is such a vital hub for the community. As was mentioned, it provides essential services, and most of all, it provides the programming and the space that invites true belonging and sense of community for residents near and far. And we know that the dedication to community well-being and the example that Scadding sets is undeniable, and the impact is deeply felt by anyone who has walked through those doors, has passed by this space, and has engaged with the programming and the services provided there. And the community at Scadding Court Community Center has been pushing for at least over a decade for us to hear and respond to their needs, right, in order to be able to do more and be more on that site. And now we are taking that important step to support Scadding Court Community Center's continued growth and to enhance their capability to serve our city. And this report recommends the official plan amendment that will allow us to revitalize both Scadding Court and the neighbor next door, Sanderson Public Library. And this is about strategically optimizing existing city land to create a more vibrant, more multifaceted community space, and while doing that, celebrating the green space that is vital to the neighborhood. And through this work, we'll be able to modernize Scadding Court, allowing you to expand your facilities so that there can be even more great work for people, expanding those essential services that we're talking about, more resources to much needed community efforts, and creating much more affordable housing on this site, and bringing ensuring that we are building a much stronger and more inclusive Toronto, and of course, improving those very unique city amenities that are at this site, particularly the pool at Scadden Court, which is so important and so necessary. There have been literally thousands of young people who have learned how to swim and built up those essential skills here on this site. This is a chance to continue to build a legacy at Scadden Court that we can be so proud of, and to set an example for how this can be done across the city, to create a space that meets the evolving needs of our community. And I urge you to support this initiative. It is a really unique opportunity that we have, and we want to make the most of it. And I'm so glad to be able to do that together. Thank you very much.
You want to move on anything? What are you moving?
I'd like to move the staff recommendations. Thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item is TE 21.7, 315 to 325 Front Street West zoning bylaw amendment application. We do have one speaker on this item. Inger Squires, are you here? Okay, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, members of council. My name is Inger Squires, and I'm a planner and principal at Urban Strategies, and I'm here today on behalf of our clients, Oxford Properties Group. I'm joined here today by members of our client team, should you have any specific questions for Oxford. I will be very brief. I'm pleased to speak with you today about this opportunity for Oxford to advance a significant mixed-use development on Front Street located between Blue Jays Way and John Street. The details of this development, including office, residential, retail uses, and 4 towers, while achieving a range of city building and urban design objectives, can be found in the staff report before you. Since the application submission in December 2024, we have worked collaboratively with city staff and have involved in multiple engagement processes, all of which have led to the decision report for approval that's before you today. I would like to sincerely thank city staff team, in particular, Susan McAlpine, Willie McRae, David Moyle, and Nassim Adab, for an intensive planning process that enabled both City of Toronto and Oxford's needs and aspirations for this key site to be met, while delivering a project that will provide much-needed rental housing, supply, and new community amenities. Mr. Chair, Deputy Mayor Malik, and members of council, I thank you for the opportunity to share this deputation today, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, thank you. Any other speakers in the room on this item? Seeing none, Deputy Mayor Malik, go ahead.
I'd like to move the staff recommendations on this item.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item is TE 21.8, 215 Lakeshore Boulevard East, Phase 1, Official Planning and Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application. We have one speaker on this item, I believe. Neil Lumen, are you here? Okay, you have 5 minutes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Hello, my name is Neil Lowen. I'm a registered professional planner with Urban Strategies. We are working on behalf of the applicant and the owner of the site, and mostly here to respond to any questions about this and to thank staff for the hard work that has gone into this over many years, but in particular over recent months to get us here today. So thank you to Chris Hilbrick, Sarah Henstock, and Carly Bowman from Community Planning, and many other staff that have put the time into getting us here today.
Thank you. Any questions with deputant? Seeing none, thank you. Any other speakers on this item? Seeing none, thank you. Deputy Malik, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I have a motion.
Okay, it's on the screen.
Thank you very much. Just want to speak briefly about this application and kind of the moment that we found ourselves in. We are making important progress on the waterfront with new communities and green spaces, recreation and daycare facilities, and better transit, all continuing to be built as this neighborhood grows. And my priority has been to ensure that community infrastructure is not coming after that growth, but it's coming alongside it. And we also need to make sure that our communities are as welcoming and inclusive as possible, and that includes affordable housing that is so desperately needed in every part of our city. And the waterfront has a long history of planning, collaboration with Waterfront Toronto City staff, and this legacy also include some of the appeals by private landowners to the former OMB. And the affordable housing requirements secured years ago for this site were done with the best efforts that we had back then. And since then, as a city, we have set new and better standards for affordable housing, for length of tenure and level of affordability. I am committed to getting a better updated affordable housing agreement for this site, and we'll be looking at the comprehensive update as phase 2 comes to the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving the amendment here, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. As amended, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you. The next item is TE 21.9, 111 Peters Street zoning bylaw amendment application, decision report. We do have one speaker on this item. Jeff Matthews, are you here? Okay. 5 minutes. Sorry. Councilor Perks is here. Okay, we're good. We have. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Matthews.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, fellow councilors. My name is Jeff Matthews. I head the development group at Capital Developments. I'm here to briefly speak on 111 Peters Street. I think briefly, but importantly, I felt it prudent to provide a short background on us. We're currently in the process of building, not just developing, but actually constructing 3,000 residential units in the city of Toronto. And I think that's an important distinction to the earlier comments that were raised today. Our core strategy, our fundamental strategy is building housing and supplying housing in this great city that we love. Despite the challenges in the current market conditions, we've quickly pivoted to purpose-built rental, and we're doing that now in some other jurisdictions and continue to investigate that so that we continue to supply housing in the city. I just wanted to briefly comment on the decision report, which is before council today, which is the subject of a positive staff report. The project repurposes a derelict part of Peters Street with grade-related retail to activate a variety of uses. Second floor, non-residential flex space that offer a variety of interesting uses as well to help grow what could be interesting at grade on this site. And then a third floor that contains 24 affordable housing units. These important podium aspects are all anchoring a residential tower, a tower that is compliant with the tall building guidelines along with the King's Spadina secondary plan requirements as it relates to shadow. It also vastly improves the public realm by removing what is front-loading off of the sidewalk, which is dangerous to the pedestrian realm, and putting it in behind the site. The process included outreach to the neighbors that went beyond the normal consultation process. At the request of Deputy Mayor Malik, we had an in-person open house in the fall of 2024 that was a great opportunity for us to provide information related to the proposal. We hand-delivered notice to that to all businesses in the community. And subsequent to that, we had a very constructive community consultation meeting with planning staff. So I think it's important just to note this comprehensive and collaborative process led us to the conclusions you see today, which is a staff report recommending approval. And I just want to thank Deputy Mayor Malik and her staff for their efforts to help move this along and work collaboratively with them, and also to planning staff, in particularly Sue McAlpine, for her tireless efforts to help shepherd this file through the process. I'm here to happily answer any questions people have if they do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for the deputy? No? Thank you. Deputy Mayor Malik, go ahead.
Thank you very
Sorry,
much.
one more. Sorry. Any other speakers in the room? Seeing none. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Malik, go ahead.
Thank you. I do just have a few questions for staff. As was mentioned, there has been quite a good deal of engagement that has gone beyond, just the typical approach, even with the constraints that we find ourselves in when it comes to the planning process. There were some specific concerns that were raised by community members, which I just wanted to kind of hear a little bit more about in terms of priority. There was an issue that was raised around the adherence of the tall building guidelines when it came to the separation of towers. a concern about the adherence of density in line with the city's guidelines, and issues around shadow and whether there was any net new shadow. Can you speak to those concerns that the community was raised and how those were addressed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in terms of the separation distance, the tall building design guidelines, as well as the zoning bylaw associated with OPA 352, require a minimum of 25 meter separation distance between tall buildings. To achieve this separation distance between two towers on two abutting properties, each site should provide a minimum separation distance of 12.5 meter, which is half of. Is it better? So in order to achieve the overall 25 meter separation distance, each property should provide the half of it, which is 12.5 meter separation distance. When we started the conversation with the applicant, they presented a development that met this requirement and provided a 12.5 meter separation distance on all three sites that abut other properties. However, through discussions with city staff, the distance to the north property line was increased to 14 meters, meaning that the proposed development meets or exceeds the minimum separation distance requirements as per the tall building design guidelines.
And I'd also asked about the adherence to our density guidelines and
yes.
How the concerns around shadow were addressed.
In terms of density, the site is designated as a regeneration area and is situated within downtown growth center and is close to the future transit line, and therefore is an area that city identifies as appropriate for intensification. Densities are not specified, and there's no density cap identified for this area, but building envelopes are guided by policies and guidelines in relation to build form matters, such as height, step back, separation distances. Densities vary within King Spadina area and change over time as new developments occur, and we have a variety of densities on different blocks in the King Spadina area. So there's no cap, and we review the applications based on the build form performance standards.
And can you speak to whether there's net new shadow from this development?
Absolutely. Through you, Chair, the proposed development fully complies with the King Spadina secondary plan policy regarding no new net shadow on the north sidewalk of Queen Street West after 12:18 p.m. during the spring and fall equinoxes. As for the shadow on the surrounding properties, the official plan policy states that tower portions of tall building should provide access to daylight in interior spaces within the tower while limiting shadow impact on public realm and surrounding properties. However, it does not specify that the daylight should be direct sunlight, and there's no indication that buildings must be free of any shadow. To ensure that there's access to daylight, we utilize the tall building design guidelines, which implement the objective of the OP, and these guidelines establish appropriate separation distances between towers to allow for adequate access to daylight. And according to the guidelines, daylighting refers to access to natural light, whether direct or diffuse sunlight. And there's no guideline suggesting that buildings must receive no shadow, but they talk about limiting. And depending on the orientation of the streets and properties in relation to the true north, some buildings may experience more shadow than others, even though they provide the appropriate separation distance.
Thank you for that level of detail. Can you speak to the community benefits that have been achieved on this site?
Through the chair, there's a number of community benefits provided with this application. The first being 24 affordable rental housing units. This is not a requirement for the site, but that is being provided. A second community benefit concerns the retention of the existing building itself. It's not a requirement as it's a non-contributing building, but the retention of it will support the city's sustainability objectives as well as the Toronto Green Standard. Third benefit concerns the public realm. One of the major benefits is the removal of the loading off of Peter Street. The direct loading, which will improve safety and opportunities for streetscape enhancements along Peter Street for pedestrians as well as our cyclists. And there are a number of public realm improvements to the laneway that's currently from Richmond Street, including tree planting and new pavement treatments and overall enhancement of that laneway.
Thank you very much.
You want to speak to this item?
Yes, I do have a motion. As we've noted here again, that there are a number of constraints and guidelines that we do have to adhere to through our provincial legislation. And when we are looking at development applications, we do have to look at them closely through our own set of official plan standards. And in the case of this application, the King Street Secondary Plan, and as City Planning has shared, there has been a tremendous amount of work done with the applicant around how this development meets guidelines, benchmarks, and supports the city's affordable housing goals. And the emphasis and the outcomes that do ensure that we are able to maximize all the community benefits on a site like this is really important to this neighborhood and how we continue to grow and thrive and invite more and more neighbors to be able to imagine a future here. I have urged the developer to engage directly with the community to ensure their concerns are addressed, and there has been a number of measures that have honored that commitment from the developer. The open house, the community consultation, and also the invitation for residents to meet and discuss the issues raised directly. And I will be continuing to advocate for the neighborhood and the neighbors to be able to engage in that dialogue, to have their concerns meaningfully addressed through the next phase of the planning process. That's why I'm bringing forward this motion in order to direct that action and to continue to be in conversation as this comes online. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed, carried. As amended, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you. The next item. Huh? Yes. Next item is T 21.10, 522 University Avenue zoning bylaw amendment application. Councilor Sachs, your item.
Yes, thank you. I've got a few quick questions for planning staff, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so just to confirm, this property is now owned by the University Hospital Network, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
And they're going to be retaining the office space and using it so they can expand cancer care for the people of Toronto and the larger community?
Through the chair, that is correct.
And what they've told us is they're not planning to build the tower in the short term. When and if they get to it, it will be to meet UHN related needs, correct?
Through the chair, yes.
Right, so it's not just a general purpose condo. And they've also confirmed to us that they're going to withdraw the existing site plan and file a fresh site plan later when they're ready to build, correct?
Through the chair, the applicant has indicated that they will be withdrawing their site plan application. They're still working through that process internally, but they would like to move ahead with the rezoning application. As you mentioned, that they are looking at this as a more of a long-term project rather than in the short term.
Right, and when they do file their fresh site plan, it will be covered by the Toronto Green Standards of the day.
Through the chair, yes.
Thank you, those are my questions.
Okay, you want to move an item or?
Well, yeah, I just want to speak to it for a minute. So this is really good news. Until recently, the plan was for this to be just another condo, more loss of office space in the downtown medical research area, to lose yet more office space. It seemed like a terrible idea. So it's wonderful news that the University Hospital Network has purchased the land, is going to be using it to expand cancer care, and that ultimately, when they have the money to build the tower, it'll be to serve both the patients and the staff of the hospital. That's excellent, excellent news. So I'm moving the staff recommendations.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.11, 522 University Avenue, alterations to and demolition of heritage attributes at the designated property under Section 33 and 34 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. Councilor Sachs.
Yeah, I have no questions, but I just speak to it for a moment. Again, this is part of the same project. There is a heritage building at the corner, the office building, and the office building is going to be primarily preserved, protecting the heritage while again repurposing the site for the uses just described. So again, this is good news. It's not just the sadism. The substantial elements of the building are being preserved, including some improvements to the public realm. And I'd move the staff recommendations.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Our next item is T 21.12, 30, 40, 43, 44, and 45 Price Street zoning bylaw amendment application. There are deputants on this item. Ryan White, are you here? Okay, you want to introduce yourselves?
Yes, sir. My name is Ms. Rosalind House. I'm one of the listed deputants, and I brought with me as well our architect and planner. I don't think it's going to be necessary for them to speak, but they are here in case there are any questions. I will try to be efficient. I might say that, and that we're also here on the next item, which is the related Heritage Preservation, Toronto Heritage Board Preservation Board matter. So we'll stay up here for both. And I know Councillor Sachs intends to speak to both. So let me just very briefly indicate that.
Just one moment, please. Can you just introduce the other two? What are your names?
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Quas.
Good morning. I'm Stephanie Quas, planner with Bousfields.
Okay.
Betsy Williamson, Williamson, architect.
Okay, thank you. So you can go ahead.
Right, and my name is Rosalind Hauser. I'm appearing on behalf of the Toronto Lawn Tennis Club, which is a nonprofit tennis and squash club built over 100 years ago, with a newer portion that was built 25 years ago. We have reviewed the staff report and support the recommendations. This is a fairly straightforward rezoning application because the racket club use is already permitted in the city's official plan and zoning bylaw. And the only thing that is missing is the performance standards needed for a racket club were not incorporated and reflected in the city's official plan and zoning bylaw until amalgamation occurred, so a little over 25 years ago. So as I say, the purpose of this rezoning is simply to introduce suitable performance standards that will facilitate the rebuild and reconfiguration of the older portion of the building. And the purpose of that, and it will be a similarly sized building, similar massing and height and scale, but the purpose of it is to better serve the needs of the existing membership, not to expand the membership, but also to include accessible facilities. Now, there has been extensive consultation with Councillor Sachs and staff and with the neighboring landowners. And I think I will only speak briefly to the consultations that occurred with the owners of the condominium at 33 Price, because I believe one of their members is listed as a speaker. The primary concerns identified by 33 Price, the owners, relates to the question of loading and challenges with truck movements at the end of at Price Street, which is a very short dead-end street. We have had productive discussions with them, facilitated by Councillor Sachs. Our transportation consultant has come up with some solutions and ideas to improve the operation of the street. And we've indicated to the condominium board and its members that the Toronto Lawn Tennis Club is committed to working with them, city staff, and the councillor to implement the solutions that the group comes up with. This we expect will be done at the site plan stage, but I understand Councillor Sachs has some ideas about maybe bringing forward a motion in the near term. So I think that's all I need to say at this point. And I'll perhaps stand down, and we're happy to answer questions, but perhaps if there are questions after the speaker, we can come back.
Okay, thank you. One moment. We do. I'm on it, don't I? Any questions for the deputant?
Yes, thank you. Rosalind, thank you for your comments and for all your hard work on this. I want to confirm a couple of things. First of all, you have made adjustments to your proposed building and massing to accommodate the concerns of your immediate neighbors, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you're willing to continue to work with the 33 Price neighbors throughout the site plan to address the traffic and loading concerns they have addressed?
Yes, we are.
Now, you mentioned you retained a traffic consultant, you retained BA who did an analysis of the real serious challenges that you have with truck loading and unloading, as well as passenger loading and unloading on Price Street. And one of the things they recommended was that you should take out the parking on the north side of Price and put in 2 commercial loading zones that accommodate large trucks. Is that right?
That is correct.
And you're willing to do so?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other speakers here. Alan Fraser, you here? Online. Okay, Mr. Fraser. Alan, can you hear me?
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Chair. Good
5
morning,
minutes, go ahead.
councilors. Thank you. I'm just going to share a photo as well. I can't do that, so I will begin. Good morning, my name is Alan Fraser. I'm appearing as a resident at 33 Price Street, which is MTCC 1108. It's a low-rise condominium that's located across from the street and adjacent to the Toronto Lawn and Tennis Club. When the Toronto Lawn and Tennis Club submitted its application to the city to rezone or rebuild the property at its address, many of our residents were alarmed to learn that the on-site loading or an internal loading dock was not included in their modernization plans. While our group does not oppose the rebuild generally, we are very concerned about its impact on street safety and livability for the residents and the users at the Toronto Lawn and Tennis Club. In recent years, there's been a significant increase in the number and size of delivery trucks to the Toronto Lawn and Tennis Club. They typically park and unload in their driveway at the east terminus of Price Street and idle on the roadway. And to exit the dead-end street, the trucks must reverse into a narrow 12-foot wide laneway that runs through our property. And these trucks most often idle and obstruct the use of our private property. As part of their expansion, the Toronto Lawn and Tennis Club is proposing to construct a building on their driveway, which they've referred to as the stuff which they've purchased, and move their truck loading activities to the street in front of our homes, which is public property that is regulated by the Toronto Parking Authority. There have been no details about these transactions and the fact that a public good is being effectively expropriated for the use of a private club. The traffic consultant did provide its report, and for some context, I would indicate that they had one fire truck appearing if there was in case a fire to deal with the issue, which is just complete nonsense. These digital diagrams, as part of the traffic study, do not depict the reality we have witnessed on the street. Multiple vehicles unloading at once, impatient drivers behind the wheel, and distracted pedestrians on the sidewalk. I've also actually been hit by a vehicle on Price Street because of distracted driving. It's very safe, and in fact, I'm surprised someone hasn't been killed. While planners have noted some of the community's concerns in their decision report, we believe their proposal modifications to the street to implement curbside loading do not sufficiently address the impact of these changes. Residents at 33 Price have observed the delivery issues close up. If curbside loading spaces are approved by the city, and they're not just commercial curbside loading facilities, they'll be for everyone, including 33 Price. We are concerned that these rules and these changes, we're concerned on how they're going to be actually enforced by the city. Parking on the street is already an issue. If the Toronto Lawn and Tennis Club submission to amend the zoning bylaws approved, we propose to work with the city and the Toronto Lawn and Tennis Club team during the site plan approval stage. As I said at the beginning, we're not opposed to the redevelopment. In fact, the TLTC provides important activities for the members of the community, but we're very concerned about street safety. And in the submission that our committee provided to council today, you'll see as just a snippet of photos that illustrates the issues with the truck loading. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the deputant?
Yes, please. Yes, so thank you very much. I know that the 33 Price board and representatives have worked really hard meeting with me and with the applicant over the last number of months. You're aware, I'm sure, that the city does not have authority to require full internal loading at Toronto Lawn, right?
Yeah, through the chair, yes, I'm aware of that.
Okay. And at the meeting one of the meetings we had, there was a suggestion that the club should have staff directing the trucks to get better control of what happens. So that has started already, right?
Through the chair, it happens intermittently. Our concern from the condo corporation is how that requirement will run with the land and be enforced by the city if it stops.
Okay, that's a fair comment. You agree that the loading and traffic problems are severe right now. Whether or not the club changes its building, the traffic problems are already here, right?
Through the chair, yes. And I would argue that if this is a once in a lifetime or 100-year renovation, these considerations to improve safety should be considered by city staff and council to ensure that no one dies.
Oh, we completely agree with you. And so one of the things you've suggested is removing the parking on the north side of Price Street, adjoining the club to make that commercial loading areas, and that's something you support. Is that right?
Through the chair, the use of a commercial loading area, that has not been, when we were speaking with city staff, wasn't termed as a commercial loading area. It was just a general loading area. And our concern would be is who gets to use that? How will the city enforce it? Just enforcement generally in that area is going to be an issue in our opinion.
All right. So one of the things you're looking for is clarity that those spots would be commercial loading. It's basically for the trucks to go there. Is that right?
That's through the chair. The staff had indicated that this would be used by the 33 Price Street, by the Lawn and Tennis Club. But again, there was no messaging about commercial loading per se. Okay.
All right. Well, that's something that we can't do as part of the rezoning, but it is certainly something that we're seized with. Okay. Oh, yes. And one other question. So if we directed a committee be set up for consultation during site plan, 33 Price will participate?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Sachs, do you have questions for staff or?
Yes, I do. A question for Mr. Dreger. First of all, can you confirm the city does not have authority to require the tennis club to put full internal loading at its facility?
Through the chair, there's no requirement for loading for this facility.
Okay. And the proposal that the club transportation advisor came forward with to remove the parking on the north side of Price Street to create loading zones, the club will have to pay for the removal of that parking, right?
Through the chair, my understanding is that is correct, that the removal of those parking spaces does come with a cost.
Okay, and you've drafted two motions for me on this item, one on the loading spaces and one on consultation, correct?
Through the chair, staff are aware of the two motions that have been drafted regarding the new loading spaces on Price Street, as well as the request to work with the applicant and residents on the transportation issues and public realm issues through the site plan process.
Right, and that will cover not only issues on the applicant's own property, but you'll also look at opportunities for improvement on the public realm, such as the Price Street folks have recommended, better pavement marking on the laneway. Those can all be discussed in that process.
Through the chair, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, you want to speak to the item, Councilor Sachs?
I do. I have two motions, which I hope the clerk has.
Okay, we'll put it on,
One's,
it's on the screen. Go ahead.
okay, okay, so are they both there? Yes, okay, great. So these two motions are to direct the applicant and staff to move forward with making transportation improvements on this street. As I indicated in my questions to the deputants, it's not the renovation that's creating the problem. The problem with truck unloading and lack of safety and children walking along the sidewalk with trucks backing up exists right now and is a serious problem. I would have been looking for a way to deal with it even without the application, but the applicant has taken the lead, has paid for the consulting work, has agreed to pay for the removal of the parking, which is essential to provide loading spaces. So I do want to acknowledge that the applicant has gone above and beyond our legal requirements, what we are enabled by the province to do in order to address this problem, which directly affects them, their members, and their neighbors. And so I am optimistic that these changes will allow us to improve what is a very difficult and dangerous situation, and that further consultations will allow us to make some additional adjustments in a very, very congested area. So I want to move my two motions, and then I'll move the staff recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Move amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. The next item, based on our trajectory here, will be done by 12:30. So T 21.13. 43, 44, and 45 Price Street, demolition of buildings within the South Rosedale Height Conservation District, and approval of replacement buildings. And we do have speakers on this item. First up is Malcolm McCurry. Are you here? Okay. You have 5 minutes.
I think I sent a photograph. Can that be put up or not?
It's available online. We don't have it.
Okay. Oh, I don't know if we get to that anyways. Yeah, my name is Malcolm McCurry. I've been a resident at 52 Rowanwood since 1992, so I'm a neighbor of the Toronto Lawn Tennis Club. Up until last June, I was also a member of the Toronto Lawn Tennis Club. But I resigned in protest over the demolition of the proposed demolition of the 1911 clubhouse and the even older houses on Price Street, because it's in the South Rosedale Heritage and Conservation District. The guidelines of the SRHCD clearly state that demolition is to be discouraged. I can say I was an eyewitness to the fact that this was not the case here. In fact, the only option presented to the membership of the club for a vote was demolition and construction. I naively thought this would never happen in a heritage district. A 120-year-old building and a 115-year-old building would not be able to be knocked down without consequences. By the way, the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario agrees. They've listed all three of these buildings as to be in danger. I think that's now an understatement. So I challenge the Toronto Preservation Board's recommendation that when they say that demolition be approved. They state, quote unquote, buildings do not contribute to the heritage character of South Rosedale. I don't believe that's true at all. The clubhouse was built in 1911. It's a unique structure built by a renowned architect named Alfred Boltby, who designed much of South Rosedale, including Chestnut Park development. All of his buildings are listed as A-list to be preserved, other than the clubhouse, which he built in 1911 as his final commission. It's a hacienda-inspired clubhouse, a design built in 1911. There's no other building like it in Toronto, and it was built long before Felon 47 made Mexico our favorite neighbor. These three buildings were all designed, as I said, by Alfred Boltby, including the two on Price Street, the semi-detached houses. So I believe the 2003 bylaw that created the Heritage District was the first in Ontario. Thankfully, that model has now spread throughout the province so that almost every municipality has heritage districts and tries to preserve our history and heritage. Demolition is to be discouraged. Make no mistake about it, this will be the largest single demolition in the designated South Rosedale since the Heritage Bylaw was passed, the largest single demolition since it was passed. So I urge you to return this file to the Toronto Preservation Board for further study on how that heritage can be strengthened rather than just documented in photographs of the destruction of these buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the deputant? Hearing none, thank you. Next up is Betsy Williamson. Are you here? You have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Great. Betsy Williamson, architect for the new project. All heritage matters pertaining to this file were discussed on Tuesday at the Toronto Preservation Board, recommended by heritage staff and adopted through a vote by the Preservation Board panel. The proposed scheme represents a design. It was one of three proposals that was presented to the club showing a renovation scheme, a small rebuild scheme, and then the scheme that we're looking at today, that is here today for approval. All of these plans were considered, and the current form of the building that is here for approval today was decided on by the club. The existing building was that you're speaking of this morning was significantly altered in the 1960s. The majority of it was torn down to build squash courts that are north on Pricefield Park, and the building kind of turns in. There's these amazing photographs of the destruction of the original building, and that building was really a loss for the city. I think that was a mistake, but that is a mistake that was done 60 years ago. The building as it stands now is fully inaccessible. You can't move between different levels, so if you are unable to navigate stairs or in a wheelchair, you cannot actually use the club. It is also in poor repair. There is no basement, and there is little room to expand the building within the structure of the buildings that are there today. The proposal also is that we're presenting today. It removes the north building facing Pricefield Park. This is a significant advantage for Pricefield Park, as it will be allowing a large amount of south light new into that park. We know that park is going to be redone, refurbished in the coming future, and the club is really excited to participate in this, actively participate in improving that neighborhood amenity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for the deputant?
No questions.
Okay, hearing none, thank you. Councillor Sachs?
Yes, the questions for heritage staff. Considering you heard the comments of the first deputant, can you tell me, given that background and his concerns, why you recommend approval of the application?
Through you, through the chair, the South Rosedale Heritage Conservation District does discourage demolition, but it doesn't prevent demolition. It doesn't say you can't demolish. There are a number of properties are rated A, B, and C in the HCD, and there are unrated properties. Unrated properties, the demolition of buildings on unrated properties is permitted, and all of the properties that are the subject of this application are unrated. As such, the Heritage Conservation District Plan allows for their demolition, provided the new construction is considered to be compatible with the surrounding neighbourhood. In this case, staff consider the application to be compatible with the surrounding neighbourhood and therefore are recommending approval.
Right. Now, the South Rosedale Residents Association has been very strongly supportive of the Heritage Conservation District. Have they expressed any objection to this application?
Through the chair, no, they haven't objected.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I want to move the staff recommendations. I certainly understand the concern, and if the original building hadn't been so badly damaged in 60 years ago, I think we would have been having a different conversation. But given that the application has encountered no opposition from the South Rosedale Residents Association, is supported by Heritage staff, and has also been recommended by the Toronto Preservation Board, I'm recommending moving the staff recommendations.
Okay, all those in favor of moving staff's recs? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Next item is TE 21.14, 54 to 70 Brownlow Avenue, zoning bylaw amendment application. We have speakers on this item. Mona Al-Sharari. Okay, 5 minutes, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and Community Council members. My name is Mona Al-Sharari and I'm a senior planner at South Incorporated. I'd just like to note that I'm also speaking on behalf of my colleague, Louis Dinker, who is also registered to speak. We are the planning consultant representing the owner of the lands located on the west side of Brownlow Avenue with the municipal addresses of 54 to 70 Brownlow Avenue. And these are lands that are subject of the rezoning application before you today. Before I start, I'd just like to first and foremost really thank city staff for working very collaboratively with us on this project. Over the past year, we've worked together with staff to ensure that all the comments that were provided are addressed. And we believe that the application before you today as being proposed is not only appropriate in land use policy terms, but is also helps achieve many of the city's overarching objectives, like providing new housing and ensuring that some of the public realm improvements in the Young Eglinton area are realized. It is our opinion that this is a good project that will really contribute to the ongoing development of the Young Eglinton area, and in particular around the Mount Pleasant station, as it provides for appropriate intensification around the new LRT station. And one of the more important elements I'd like to highlight is through working with staff, we really worked with them to ensure that the apartment neighborhood character along Brownlow Avenue is maintained through this development proposal through the provision of adequate setbacks. And another element I'd like to highlight is this proposal does help achieve the Midtown Greenway along Brownlow Avenue. I'd just like to conclude by thanking again city staff for working with us on this application and just noting that we do support the recommendations that are provided in the enclosed staff report. With that, I'll just end it there, and I'm happy to answer any questions that any council members may have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions of the deputant? Hearing none, thank you. Any other speakers on the side? Sorry, any of the other deputants in the room? Seeing none, thank you. Councillor Sachs? Sorry, Councillor Matlow. You're right, Councillor Matlow, my apologies.
Yeah, I move the staff recommendation.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.15, 1212 to 1220 Yonge Street, zoning bylaw amendment application. We do have a speaker on this item. Kathy McDonald, are you here? 5 minutes.
So good morning. Yeah.
So this revised application was deferred for public consultation, as there hadn't been any for the increase in the size of the application from 22 stories to 35. And we had 2 meetings subsequently, one with Councillor Matlow and Sachs and planning staff, and the other with the applicant. So we reviewed the issues we saw with the application. First, sort of excessive height and density. We continue to be concerned about developments we're seeing in our area. 8 towers have been approved over 35 stories. 5 have not yet been approved. 1 is under construction. This site, like many others, is really too tall to accommodate such a tall tower. The tower has been pushed north to provide an acceptable tower separation distance to the OLT approved application to the south. But the north face has balconies attached, and the effect is really a very high wall abutting the very narrow Elkhorn Avenue. The application to the south was approved at 31 stories by the OLT, but it had significant public benefits. The inclusion of a heritage facade and replacement of rental units. And this application has only the addition of a few street trees. And we don't understand why there appears to be no limit to the density that can be permitted in a PTMS-A area, and therefore why 35 stories here. So second, excessive wind on sidewalks and the upper terraces. Despite favorable wind studies, we know that tall buildings do create excessive winds, and we also know that podiums help mitigate these wind conditions, but there really is no podium on the Elkhorn facade. There is on the other facades. The Elkhorn Avenue is a really narrow street. It's the entrance to the Cottingham neighborhood and schools. And there's also very heavy pedestrian traffic on Elkhorn. So we were really concerned about the fact there's the entrance to the condo building on Elkhorn and no drop-off space really can be provided on Elkhorn, and we have been pushing to have a lay-by added there. I think planning staff has said, well, you could use the garbage collection area and visitor parking space in the basement, but for drop-offs, this doesn't really work. So we are therefore recommending, 1, that public benefits be provided for this application. 2, that the traffic issues on Elkhorn be addressed by including provision for short-term parking, for drop-offs and service visits, et cetera, including the option of the lay-by on Elkhorn. The applicant was to provide proposals for this, but we haven't seen any. The development of a plan to better manage the offset Elkhorn-Shaftesbury intersection with Yonge to provide better pedestrian and traffic safety, then that this plan be developed in consultation with the councillors and the Summerhill Residents Association and the Deer Park Residents Group. And further, that there be a snow removal plan developed in the same way in consultation with the neighbors, because piling up of snow on a narrow street does not work. And finally, that the site plan review stage
So you're at time.
Okay.
You're at time, I'm sorry.
Can I just finish the sentence?
Go ahead.
Thank you. That's my last sentence. Include the consideration of additional wind mitigation measures, plans for a lay-by or an alternative measure to accommodate drop-offs, et cetera, and a construction management plan. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, thank you. Any other speakers in the room? Seeing none, Councillor Matlaw.
I had a very, I think, very honest and very thoughtful process with the community representatives, and we've achieved an amendment that I'm going to move along with the item that I believe reflects the work that we want to do as a community.
Okay, so you're moving your motion? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. T 21.16, 309 to 349 George Street, City initiated official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. I'm going to move staff's recommendations. Can I put on the screen?
No, we don't have to put the recs on the screen.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.17, 309 to 311 and 349 George Street, alterations to designated heritage properties under Section 42 of the Ontario Heritage Act. I'm going to move staff's rec. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.18, 50 to 64 Morton Street, official plan zoning bylaw amendment application. Councillor Matlaw. Number 18.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.19, 847 to 855 Kingston Road, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application. I'm going to move staff's recs for Councillor Bradford. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.20, 120 Peter Street to 122 to 124 Peter Street, 126 to 128 Peter Street, and 357 to 359 Richmond Street West, alterations to demolition and construction of buildings under Section 42 of the Ontario Heritage Act and authority to amend a heritage easement agreement. Deputy Mayor Malik.
Thank you. I'd like to move the staff recommendations, please.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.21, 78 and 80 Nassau Street, inclusion in the Heritage Register. Councillor Sachs.
I move the staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.22, 158 Morse Street, application to remove a private tree. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. You'll remember that last month I deferred this to do a site visit. I did do the site visit with staff and the resident, and I'm going to move the staff recommendation, but also understand that the resident should come back in a year if there's any changes. It's a very odd-looking tree, and potentially could be some issues, but healthy enough at the moment, even though it's in fair condition. Thank you.
Moving staff's recs. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, and there's a few other more in between as well. Okay, are you ready to do item 1? T 21.1, naming of the existing public lanes south of Queen Street West, extending between Augusta Avenue and Spadina Avenue. Deputy Mayor Malik.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to speak briefly on this. We know this stretch of laneway has been for a long time more than just a back alley. It's a canvas and a community space, and it has been globally recognized as a showcase of talent and creativity, particularly of street artists from across the city and beyond. It's part of Toronto's identity. You've probably seen it in a lot of backgrounds and backdrops as that ever-changing open-air gallery, and we know it as Graffiti Alley, and it celebrates the artistic expression and the vibrancy of our city, but especially of our downtown. And surprisingly, despite its notoriety and its fame, Graffiti Alley has not actually been its official name until now. And that's thanks to the leadership of the Toronto and East York Community Preservation Panel. I want to give a special thanks to Adam Wynn and the passionate community members from the Garment District Neighborhood Association, Friends of Alexandra Park, and the Queen Street West BIA. And we're moving forward to formalize what has long been recognized by artists and residents and visitors alike as Graffiti Alley. And this name change also is so important as it falls in line with my work with the community to enhance the regular maintenance and sense of welcome of the alley network, especially of Graffiti Alley itself. And I want to thank everyone who has been part of that journey to preserve and promote Graffiti Alley over the years, and I look forward to continuing that work together. Thank you very much. I would like to move the staff recommendations.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. T 21.2, naming of an existing public lane north of Gerard Street East, extending between Greenwood Avenue and Redwood Avenue. Councillor Fletcher.
This is just the final step. We started this last meeting. I'd like to move the recommendation to approve Luella Price Lane and invite everybody to the fun party that we're going to have for it.
I do love a party. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Especially when it's hosted by Councillor Fletcher. 26? Yeah. T 21.26, 1 Roxborough Street West, construction staging area. We do have one speaker on this item. Mary Helen, are you here? Spencer, are you here? Online? Go ahead, 5 minutes.
Hello, just a moment. I want to make sure you can hear me.
We could hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Moyes and members of the committee, and thank you for your time this morning. I'm a board member of the ABC Residents Association and also a member of the Avenue Road Safety Coalition Steering Committee, and I'm here today representing the interest to advocate and improve pedestrian and cycling safety on behalf of both of these organizations. I know that I do not have to convince you of the danger from the hundreds of intimidating heavy truck and construction equipment on our streets at most times of the day. The problem is even more significant in the busy downtown with numerous construction projects underway in dense, congested areas. Sadly, there have been 2 deaths by these trucks in our small neighborhood just in the past year. We are grateful for Councillor Sachs's consistent vigilance and advocacy to avoid these tragedies, and we too are committed to cooperating with the developers and city staff to improve construction safety for our residents. In preparation for the meeting this morning, I tried to count the number of approved development applications on Yonge Street between St. Clair and Bloor. I'm afraid I ran out of fingers and toes, but let's just say it's a lot. Over the next 5 years, there's going to be 2 to 3 large construction projects happening in almost every block along the route between St. Clair and Bloor. And you've heard about a number of them today on this, just before you on this one committee. We were relieved to hear from the report for 1 Roxborough that the construction hub we requested between Marlborough and Bloor has been approved. And we thank Councillor Sachs and members of this committee for that approval. It is reassuring to know that Catherine Deschamps is the manager of this new hub, and we look forward to her guidance and oversight for all the projects along Yonge Street, starting with this one at 1 Roxborough. This build is on a small site at a complex intersection. It has 2 active condo projects and a city water main construction nearby, with additional projects likely to begin along the section of Yonge Street before this site is completed. The impact on our community is significant. We have thoroughly reviewed the construction staging plan and spoken to Nathan Chan and Catherine about it, and we are pleased with the revisions that now provide a more precise description of the haul route plan that explicitly prohibits heavy truck traffic using Roxborough Avenue for site access or egress. We have drawn from the experience of others participating on community construction liaison committees, and we request that you make 4 additional simple but very important additions to the list of staff recommendations. This additional site-specific guidance will clarify expectations and facilitate smoother and safer construction for the applicants and the community at large. And we ask you to amend the staff recommendations to include these additions. I'm pleased to answer any questions, but after that, I also have one other more general thing to ask the committee. Thank you.
It's best to ask your questions now because you don't have an opportunity later.
Okay, it's not a question. I just want to comment, not distracting from this specific issue. I just want to comment that during my research about this, I was both shocked and enlightened to find out that the dump truck drivers in the city are paid by the hour. I've often wondered as I walk in the downtown why these truck drivers think that they're driving at a NASCAR race and seem to have very little concern for what's around them. From even other vehicles, people on bikes, people walking. But now I realize that the reason for this is that they're paid by the hour. This is an obvious incentive for them to move as quickly as they can. I really do think that this practice needs to be investigated, and I'm asking this committee or one of you to take this up as a project to investigate how it's affecting safety and to see what can be done about it. Our streets are going to be littered with these massive, intimidating vehicles for a number of years to come, and we need to bring them under control. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for the deputant? Hearing none.
Mr. Chair, I don't have questions for the deputant, but these 4 requests are new to me. I know you've got a few other items. Can you stand this matter down? Let me speak to transportation staff.
We have 5 minutes going through this item, so you could defer it to the next meeting if you like.
I don't think we can defer to the next meeting, but I do need a couple of minutes to speak to transportation staff.
Well,
so if you could please hold this down, deal with your other items.
You have 5 minutes to hold it down. Then we're losing. Then we're losing quorum. Okay, I'll hold this down. Next item is T21.30 Corridor Safety Review Update, Mortimer Avenue between Pape Avenue and Broadview Avenue. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to receive the report for information, and I've been advised that we will be proceeding with the stop signs. Remember, Pape and Mortimer was where a wonderful woman was injured so badly by the Ontario line. So these are measures that we're undertaking. Thank you very much to staff and the community.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, we're going to now the new items. 43. Sorry, missing one, even though you just reminded me. T21.43, revised speed bump locations, public lane west of Logan Avenue, north of Colgate Avenue. Councillor Fletcher. Item 43.
Just read it again, please.
Revised speed bump locations, public lane.
Yes. Move the staff recommendations to move the bump. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now to new items. T21.53, parking amendment, Palace Street between Cooperage Street and Tannery Road. I'm going to move the recommendations in my letter. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T21.54, expediting safety installations at the Vaughan Road and Arlington Avenue intersection. Councillor Matlow.
I move that.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T21.55, restoring public art at Canoe Landing Park. Deputy Mayor Malik.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to, first of all, continue to express my absolute heartbreak and disbelief at the loss of the red canoe at Canoe Landing Park by a fire early yesterday morning. Thank you to Toronto Fire Services and the crews for putting it out so quickly, and we're relieved that no one was harmed. This iconic red canoe is so meaningful to me and for so many of us across the city. It's a welcome to our downtown. It's the kind of centerpiece of an incredible shared space and community park. And the recommendations in my letter put our focus on working collaboratively collaboratively with community members, with the artist Douglas Copeland, and with city staff to ensure that we're working together to restore that public art and to continue to celebrate this space. And we are still looking for answers on what occurred there. And I want to thank everyone who's reached out with their care and commitment and their amazing memories of this space. We're going to be honoring that as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. T 21.56, Dover Court Road parking amendments. Councilor Bravo.
I'd like to move that, please.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.57, Northumberland Street parking amendments. Councilor Bravo.
I'd like to move that, please.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. T 21.58, Perth Avenue and Sterling Road traffic and parking amendments. Councilor Bravo.
I'd like to move that, please.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the last item here is TE 21.59, Salmon Avenue parking amendments. And I'm going to move the recs in Councilor Bradford's letter. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor Sachs, are you prepared to make a decision on your item?
Because we're going. Because we're leaving.
Yes, thank you. We're going to have to amend the staff recommendations so that the construction management plan is approved only until the next TEYCC. So if any ask clerks to prepare that change, please.
You can't, that's not permittable.
Of course it's permissible. We can set the dates of the expiry of the permit.
The clerk is saying that that's not.
Well, then we'll make it expire the end of May. But I'm not prepared. What this contractor is already behaving badly. They've already had their.
I need to speak to transportation staff whether that is even feasible.
The clerk needs to speak to transportation staff to see if this is feasible or not.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. I just spoke to Nathan Sham and Vince LaFreddy, so they're both there.
It's just really important to prepare these things in advance.
I only found out today that this contractor has been allowing its trucks to block the bike lanes. And these changes, I specifically confirmed with ABCRA last week that they didn't ask for any changes, and here they are asking for changes. So we're going to need to shorten this up for until May and bring it back.
So we can defer it to the next.
I can't defer it because construction is already underway.
You have to give a ruling if your motion's in order.
Well, let the clerks figure this out.
Thank you.
The problem with this issue, this item is that there is a bill on the item, and the bill cannot be amended at this point in time. So if you wish to defer the item, we can do that, and then the bill could be ready, and then you have time to work out your issues with whatever you need to do regarding the timing.
So you have two options here: defer or approve. What's your decision here, Councilor Sachs?
Gone.
Councilor Sachs?
question to the clerk. Can we, if we approve it today, we can reopen it at the next meeting?
So why don't you just defer it then? If you defer or approve?
You can reopen it at the next meeting if you wish to. You'll just have to bring a letter asking us to reopen.
Did you say that at
Okay,
the beginning, Councillor
all right.
Perks? Oh, okay.
So you want to approve it?
So we'll approve it and we will reopen it next meeting.
Okay, so let's approve this
Well, we'll
item. All those in
approve it.
favor?
Let's see if we-
Opposed? Carried. It's done. We need to do the bills first.
I know there's two general bills in there. Can we find out which one it is from him?
Okay, that bills 271 to 293 prepared for the April 3rd, 2025 meeting 21 of the Toronto and East York Community Council be declared as bylaws and passed subject to section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. That confirmatory bills to confirm the legislative proceedings of the Toronto and East York Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 21 on April 3rd, 2025, be declared as a bylaw and passed subject to section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Okay, thank you, folks, and thank you to our staff. I try.